welcome up Noah Bryant. Noah is, he's with Novocure, and Noah's going to be presenting on building patient-first communities on social media. He's got some nice examples to share and approaches of what he does. Novocure, obviously, more on the kind of device side of things as well. So there's a slight switch in gears here in that respect. Noah's random fact is he's a font expert, I believe, but Noah will be able to elaborate on that further. Please join me in welcoming Noah as our final speaker today.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. Cool. Well, given that I'm a font expert, unfortunately, my font in my presentation isn't carrying over properly, so that's kind of funny. But we'll carry on regardless. So hi, everyone. I'm Noah Bryant. I'm from a company called Novocure. Really excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm here to talk about something that I'm really passionate about, and that is building patient-first communities on social media. I know we've talked a lot about social today, which is just really cool, especially for this industry. And I know I'm the only barrier to happy hour, so I'm going to try and provide some value to everyone here today about what we've been doing at Novocure regarding social media in the next 20 minutes or so. So let's do it. So again, it's funny. I feel like we're totally on the marketing train of using quotes. For me, I always bookend my presentations, especially when we're talking about patient-first approach, right, with some of my patients. So again, just a little background on Novocure generally. So at Novocure, we have a medical device called Optune Geo. It treats newly diagnosed and recurrent glioblastoma. That's a type of brain cancer. Again, also really cool, following up Miles' presentation on rare disease. We're working in a rare disease state in oncology. And again, I just really like to start with this quote. This is from Kim, who currently uses Optune Geo. I refuse to sit down and give up when it comes to my care. A positive attitude and support system means so much. There is hope. And I think that we have this incredible opportunity here, all of us in the room, to work through social media to help provide hope to our patients. So, stepping back a little bit, we spoiled this a little bit, but here's something about me. So I actually have a design and photography background. I worked across multiple pharma med device brands on the agency side originally, and now I'm with Novocure. I currently work on pretty much everything digital marketing, including social, but one of my true passions lies in creating vibrant and innovative digital communities. And again, my fun fact is that if you give me enough drinks at happy hour, I will go on font-related tirades, and they're pretty entertaining. Like, I swear, they're slightly entertaining. Or, of course, if you get me talking about social media, I will not shut up. So definitely feel free to get me some drinks at happy hour. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. And now just a little bit about why I think social media is relevant, specifically in the oncology space and in the rare disease space, for that matter. This is another quote. A diagnosis of cancer is life-changing, and patients are highly motivated to seek health information. Many also have a desire to communicate with other patients who understand their experiences. And I think this goes without saying, and we all know this in the room, that many patients find strength in digital communities when being confronted with something as life-changing as a cancer diagnosis. And, I think vibrant digital communities already exist online, but it's always a difficulty in pharma. How do we work in those communities? How do we build our own communities? How do we engage with patients as a brand? It becomes really tricky, obviously, from all of the regulatory requirements and legal requirements, and then also just from a standpoint of the fact that we're used to being somewhat slow in the industry, and social media requires extreme speed and nimbleness to be able to provide content to our communities. So I do think that the really cool thing right now is we have access to so many tools, so many things that can help us pull off social media in the med tech, in the biotech, and in the pharma space. And I'm gonna go into that a little bit. I think the rise of generative AI, specifically for content production, is really powerful. There are partners literally in the room, like LiveWorld, that can help you deal with comment moderation and engagement on social media. And really, we have access to so much more than we used to, and now is the time really to start to figure out how do we play on socials, how do we do it well, how do we do it in a way that makes sense, and really get out there and start to help our patients. So I know I talk a big game, but I like to put up some of our social metrics just to show that I do have some experience in terms of what I'm about to show you from this specific campaign. So again, these are our impressions for 2023 on social media. We had around 9 million impressions served, 2 million engagements on those impressions, and 16,129 total comments, with about a 20% engagement rate by impressions. Obviously, if I show this to my friends at CPG, CPG companies, they're like, all right, well, this is, we can do better than that. But I do think that for specifically a rare disease indication, we were really happy with these metrics. And we were specifically really excited about the comments and the comment and engagement quality that we got from this campaign. And it's something that, I preach all the time. It's something that Dawn and I were talking about over the break, but it really comes down to like having those open comments and being able to engage truly and authentically as we can is super important. So basically, I'm gonna go through the steps that I did in order to get to those metrics in 2023 and talk a little bit about what I learned on the way. So again, we've talked a lot today about proper research, proper customer research, consumer research, patient research. And I really do think that ample research is required, but we talk a lot about data. I think data is really important, but something that's equally as important is just talking a lot with your patients. And this is an example I always like to put on when I'm talking about insights that we gathered from speaking with some of our patients. And one really cool thing that we learned when we dived into the data, into market research, into talking with some of our patient ambassadors was this concept of the blue light warrior, which was something that our patients were using on social media almost as a calling card, as a tag. When they're commenting on Facebook, they would start their posts with, "Hey, blue light warriors." They would sign off with, "Good night, blue light warriors." And we were like, what is this blue light warrior thing? It sounds really cool. But we found out that patients were inspired by the blue light that turns on when Optune Geo is delivering therapy. And we thought that was just really interesting. And it was something that really inspired us internally and was really cool to understand about our patient communities as they interacted online. So it just goes to show, things like talking with your patients, gathering data and insights, it can seem a little bit complicated, but honestly, just talking and gathering some quick research can really lead you to incredible discoveries that are super relevant on socials. So second, I think we also talked a little bit about this today, especially in the last presentation, is, it can be really easy to go out with so many channels, right? And I love the example Miles presented in his last presentation, like you can go out with every channel in the world and push it out and maybe it will be successful, it depends. And I totally agree with that. I think that one of the things that I've learned is that it's okay to condense your channels. And it's okay, especially, I'm not at a large pharma company, we're a small med device company. We don't have the budget or the resources to really show up in all these channels. And what you can do is determine where are your patients at, where is it most valuable that you could reach them, where can you provide the most value to add to the conversation and to actually add to their feeds in a positive way rather than take away from it. And once you find those channels, it's okay to stick to those channels, I think is something that's really important. I hope I'm not the only one in the room that, gets an email from sales at, 11 at night that says, "Hey, why aren't we on this platform?" And you have to respond and be like, we're working on it, we're thinking about it. But I think what I've learned is that it's okay to say, "Hey, that's a great platform. We'll look into it, but maybe our patients aren't there, or maybe the budget needs to be spent in other channels to make sure that we're doing a really good job there instead." So really it comes down to your 17 options, maybe they turn into 2. And that feels wrong at first, but if you're really hyper-focusing and targeting like where you need to be for your patients, then it becomes a simple solution. So I also put here just the importance of paid versus organic social, and I think that really will help you make distinctions on where to put your budget and what platforms to invest in. I think a lot of the times we talk about social generally, and I think it's really important, especially in like 2024, that we talk about the importance of paid versus organic social for specific channels, right? Like if we're talking about Facebook Meta organic, it doesn't exist this year. Like it, you know, if this was 10 years ago, we could talk about the fact that maybe we could grow organically on Facebook. Whereas if you're talking about something like TikTok, a new generation, not a legacy channel, there's still potential to grow organically on TikTok for brands, and that's awesome. But you know, you really have to decide, what channels am I doing? Am I doing paid? Am I doing organic? Why am I doing it? Are my patients there? There's so many questions to consider when you're engaging in anything regarding patient social. So I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked depending on what you're doing and why you're doing it. But I definitely recommend, definitely, you know, feel free to cut down to specific channels, and that's okay. So now you already know my bias. I'm a creative, so of course I'm going to talk about something regarding creative. And I put here, you know, 75% of advertising impact is determined by creative. I would argue social is even more important just because of the feed. Like, you know, again, we saw this earlier today. The feeds are so competitive at this point. They're so competitive for all kinds of reasons. There's so much content out there. And eventually we're trying to add value. Like we're trying to add value to our patients' feeds. And if we're not doing that, then we're gonna get lost. It's not gonna do anything. And at the end of the day, we have to add value, and we need to make sure our creative is on point. For paid social, creative attrition can take place as early as 1 week into an ad's life cycle. Like we have to be on it in terms of creative. So I do say this, and I think there's a few ways that we can really focus on this creative impact, and there's ways that we can optimize. And again, there are so many tools available right now that we can really take advantage of in order to do that. So one cool thing over here you'll see, and this is illustrative, but you know, there's a patient image on the side of the screen that originally starts the patient's wearing a hat, and it's actually covering up the arrays of the device. And when I got this image, I was like, I like it, but some direction from brand was like, wow, it would be really great if we had an image that showed off the arrays more. And I took it back and I was like, all right, well, if we were to do this traditionally through Photoshop, which I can do, but I'd prefer not to, it would take like 10 hours. We'd have to remove the cap. We'd have to do some background work. We'd have to take images of the arrays. We'd have to place them on. It's a lot of work creatively to do that. And one thing that we leveraged was Adobe's new Gen AI plugin, which I'm not sure if it's still in beta, but even in beta, it's a really incredible tool in terms of creative generative AI. And we're actually able to, and again, this is just a mock-up, but we're able to really quickly add the arrays onto the patient, and it looks pretty seamless. I could use some post-editing, honestly, but like, it's incredible what you can do so quickly now with some of these programs. So that's really inspiring. I also think there's a lot of other AI tools that can really help with these creative workflows. One of those is Adobe Firefly. I think the Adobe Gen AI plugin that I'm showing here is really interesting, but for Firefly specifically, it's good at creating fully brand new images, and that's super helpful. And also Adobe's been doing a great job in terms of intellectual property and copyright, which is also really important and something that we need to look at and consider while we're investing in these AI creative tools. Besides that, other creative AI tools that we're utilizing, definitely, I mean, ChatGPT just as a social media assistant, even to just help you come up with ideas and think about content, can be really effective. And then also another program we utilize is called Creatopy, C-R-E-A-T-O-P-Y. And Creatopy is a really great program specifically for banner ad production, but can also do social. They have some really great aspects to their program that we've taken, and again, just cutting down production costs, really creating some awesome creative so that we can provide that advertising impact. So those are some things we've done with AI, along with utilizing in-house creative teams. That's been super helpful. I think that one of the things that bringing some of our creative in-house has done is really allowed us to provide some of our advertising partners, some of our creative partners, more room to focus on what I would consider higher value work. Like focus on segmentation, focus on something else. We can bring some of that creative in-house, get it done really quick and cheaply. Yeah, and then I think modular content is another way that you can bring these creative costs down in terms of really just developing those, different content templates and modular content to be able to bring those costs down, which is really important. So I think that staying in tune and adapting is definitely something that's key here. So allowing comments, obviously super important. Dawn definitely took us through that in her presentation, and allowing comments is super important. So building a workflow, first and foremost, with your legal review teams is paramount to make sure that questions and concerns are answered quickly and properly. Patients will tell you if your content is not resonating. Be ready to adapt and flex on the fly. Moderation tools and workflows are extremely advanced now, and they're built to deal with hundreds of comments per day, which is great because you can take this and really build out comment workflows that make sense. Lastly is organizational support. So organizational support is really necessary to build these social media communities. Working closely with your legal, compliance, and commercial partners can ensure that best practices are being followed. And then definitely include them early in the creative process, early in the overall process to be able to make sure that they're involved in getting used to these things. So definitely include them, and then the entire organization really needs to be committed to be able to bring these social media practices to life. So I definitely would recommend that in the future as well. Awesome. So again, as I go through here, just to wrap things up, I always like to finish with a patient quote. And this is a quote from Janine, also a really smart individual, super cool. She's actually a lawyer, which is really inspiring. And her quote is that, "I will not give up hope and accept any expiration dates for my life. I'm grateful for every treatment and every day that I have with my family, even the ones that are the hardest." So that's a really cool quote from her. I hope that I was able to provide some value about social media, and I look forward to any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Noah. Any quick questions for anyone before we wrap up for the day? The summit? No? I know this is presentation 27 of 27, so I get it. Any final questions or comments from anyone? Yes, Miles.
Yeah, could you talk maybe a little bit about how did you go about selling the less is more, particularly for social channels, because it's so enticing to be everywhere? Yeah, anything you could share there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think less is more. I think definitely when it comes to really like with your leadership team determining what makes the most sense, I think it's good to just be transparent with them in terms of how I would put it. I think there's even been times when leadership team and sales have reached out to me and been like, why are we not on TikTok, for example? And I think that building a use case and really explaining to them what resources we have available to us, and then also being able to explain adequately, okay, here's what I'm seeing from our patient research. We're seeing patients on these platforms, and we're not seeing them on the platforms they're suggesting. I do think data does go a long way with leadership teams to be able to explain that. But it also comes down to really that, that last piece I went on, organizational support, like bringing leadership into the process, bringing legal into the process, and even compliance, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Wonderful, great question. Any last final remaining comments, questions from anyone? No? Yes, Evan.
Sorry to make you run across the room again there, Simon. Yeah. So are there any tools in particular that you recommend or that you use with your team that make kind of the interaction, the responding to comments, just generally staying on top of what's coming through in that comment section easier?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a great question. So we do have like full 24/7 moderation. Again, I think LiveWorld is a great example of a partner that can help with that. In terms of other tools that really help, we are currently utilizing Crisp, which is a software solution specifically for AE moderation, which I really like. They actually have like specific medical employees on staff to handle AEs. Obviously, in terms of like things that really are things to watch out for when we're working on social projects like this. AEs are obviously a concern. And I know regulations are slightly different from med device to pharma, but in my instance, like being able to really watch out for those AEs and have a specific moderation agency based on processing the AEs has been super helpful. So I definitely could recommend CRISP. And other processes, honestly, are just building a good relationship with your legal and medical teams and being able to work with them on any specific troublesome AEs. Really, I said this in one of the last slides in the presentation, but being able really to like explain and bring along your legal and medical teams and just like wrap them into the whole process so that, you know, when I'm sending them messages at 7 at night going like, hey guys, we got in an AE, like what do we do? They're kind of along for the ride. And especially bringing them like, you know, some of these comments I put up here I didn't mention, but comments specifically like from the community and sharing those out to medical, to legal, and letting them know like, hey, here's the work that you guys are helping pull us off on social, and like these are the real impacts that we're making with our patients. So I definitely think building that kind of organizational understanding and like breaking through those silos really does help in terms of dealing with those AEs and dealing with comment moderation generally. Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, let's give Noah a round of applause again. Great talk. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so